Welcome to Innovating with Scott Amyx, and I'm your host, Scott. And today I'm joined by Gary Michelson, who is a board-certified orthopedic spinal surgeon and inventor of more than 990 patents. Welcome, Gary.
Good morning, Scott.
Well, I want to start with something a little bit personal, is that based on some of the readings that I found, is that you had a very kind of an early inspiration in your life. Your grandmother had spinal disorder, and you saw as a child how much she suffered from her spinal deformity, and it affected her nervous system. And I think you even referenced the fact that if she were able to, if she had her hand near the stove, she would literally not feel her hand on fire. As a child, that must have been horrific.
Well, I saw her hand catch on fire when I was a young boy, and that was pretty horrifying.
And tell us about how did that kind of leave that impression? And as you thought about your career, eventually going into spinal surgery.
Well, my grandmother actually said to me as a little boy, well, the doctors really can't help me now, but you'll grow up, you'll become a doctor, and you'll fix me.
That's quite a responsibility and an incredible confidence in your grandmother that you had this gift. Speaking of gift, over your life, according to my rough calculation, in order for you to create over 990 patents, whether it's in advanced procedures, instruments, and implants to be able to reduce post-surgical pain, blood loss, complication, recovery time, I mean, we're talking almost like 2 patents per week continuously for 10 years. Help me to understand how we're able to, perform your day-to-day surgeon duties on top of the patent development.
Well, Scott, it's a good question. I think people think that priorities mean that you have 10 things you want to do and you just number them, 1, 2, 3. It doesn't work that way. Some choices in life are more like frostbite. You choose one path, you don't get the other. And so the cost of what I did that most people would not want to pay is I did not have a wife, I did not have a family, I didn't own a TV, because I didn't have the time to watch it. So that's the price that I paid for that.
Your head's down, you're grinding away in your daily work, and you're developing these patents. At what point did you realize that you were sitting on this incredible portfolio that eventually led to the acquisition of those patents by Medtronic?
Okay, so to begin with, I had the good fortune of pursuing an area of medicine that was not well developed. So when I started out and I had finished my orthopedic residency, I actually did a fellowship in spine surgery with one of the people who was considered to be a master spine surgeon at that time. And whether you did the procedure exactly the way you were taught, the outcomes were not predictable. So half the patients would get better, the other half maybe not, and some would actually get worse. So that's not a very advanced state for spine surgery, and that created a tremendous opportunity to improve things. And just step by step, each time I saw a need, I tried to repair that need or to improve upon it.
Well, that is exactly the definition of innovative, iterative invention and innovation. So that's terrific. Well, I want to focus on the 2 out of the 3 foundations that you run. Maybe we can start with the Michelson Medical Research Foundation first. What exactly is that, and how are you guys further expanding the frontier of medical science?
Yes, so we have a number of objectives. The first one is we have a major initiative to fund young, brilliant scientists. In this country, NIH is the main funder of all academic medical research. They don't fund young researchers. So if you look at all the people who've ever won Nobel Prizes in medicine physiology, regardless of how old they were when they got the award, the work was done before they were 35 years old. So we've made it an initiative to try to identify, and fund these young, brilliant researchers to start them on their careers. Another area that we're very interested in is trying to de-silo brilliant scientists from their narrow area of interest so they'll work together sort of like in a Manhattan Project, where you had nuclear physicists, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, welders, machinists. They all came to work every day and worked together. That does not occur in science today. So we're trying to drive that.
That's interesting. So this is in the form of grants to the individuals or to the universities that then gets endowed to the researchers working on projects?
Good question. So the young researcher grants are $150,000 each, and that will allow them to live comfortably and do their research for the first year. We have managed to get follow-up funding for every one of our awardees, so we feel pretty good about that. That really launches them on their careers about 10 years ahead of the curve. In regard to the second part, we call it convergent science, my wife and I helped USC to build a brand new medical research center called a Convergent Bioscience Center to do that. And we're currently engaged with another university in Southern California to do the same thing in regard to immunotherapy.
That's terrific. Now, in terms of the systematic approach of identifying these young, promising scholars, are you primarily searching against patents, citations, papers? What exactly are you looking at, and what's the criteria to determine if, in fact, their work is going to be profound and novel?
Well, what we're really trying to do is, again, get people out of their silos. So what is radically changing medicine today is big data. So you know big data people. These are computer people. These are mathematicians. They have no interaction with microbiologists. So what we want to do is get those people who really will be the future to have an interest in something that they would have no interest in. So we kind of tease them out with these large grants. That's a substantial grant at that point in your career to focus on, for example, immunotherapy. And we've had literally hundreds and hundreds of applications, and we have a jury. This one happens to be headed up by a man who won a Nobel Prize, and they evaluate each piece of research. We interact with the people who made the proposals to ask them for more information when they pass the initial screening, and then we select a group out from them and we fund them. And we follow them along. We try to make sure their careers continue.
That's terrific. And how do you ensure that you're getting a kind of a reasonably universal encompassing of all the scholars, because that assumes that everyone is aware of your scholarships or grants and your program?
Well, we used to reach out through the print media and attend the major world conferences in these various areas. But my wife, who's younger than I, convinced us we should go online. So now we do both.
Gotcha. Now you run a couple other foundations. Tell us about the foundation that I believe is working on the education and textbooks. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the 20 Million Minds Foundation. I didn't actually name that. Somebody who worked with us said, geez, there's 20 million kids in college today, and that's how we named it. But in about 2008, when I was having breakfast, I read the newspaper that there was a rather poor community, Santa Ana, that had a community college. In California, there were 112 at the time. And the number one reason for the kids who had B or better averages in the first year not returning for the second year was they could not afford the textbooks. The textbooks were actually running more than the tuition at that point. They were over $800 a year. So a number of the teachers there decided they would reach into their own pockets and help pay for the textbooks for these kids to come back. So I thought that was so moving, given what a teacher makes, that I contacted them and asked them how that was going. And they said they were about $50,000 short. So I wrote them a check. I didn't know these folks. But that night, instead of feeling good, I felt bad. because there's another 111 community colleges and nobody was writing the check. Even if you did, what would happen next year? So that night I made a decision that I would go into the college textbook publishing business, but instead of selling them, I'd give them away for free.
That's amazing.
That's a business model for you.
That's a beautiful, beautiful philanthropic and scholarly endeavor. So terrific. And how many people are the recipients of this program?
So far, we've had 9 million people fully utilize at least one of our 35 textbooks. We have 3 million people who are using it today. It's in more than half of the universities. And if you simply multiply the number of people times the cost of a textbook, had they gone out and bought it, we're now up to over $800 million saved.
That's amazing. What an incredible skill and reach. Because you're one of the, truly exceptional inventors and minds of our time, you know both kind of the journey of where medicine has come from, but also kind of a forward-looking perspective on what's really cutting edge and what's going to be revolutionary. You mentioned data, but can you get into a little bit more specific examples of things that really excites you?
Sure. Well, the biggest event in our lifetimes medically is gene editing. The ability to reach inside of somebody and actually change their genetic makeup. So there are literally hundreds of diseases that are what we call single gene defects. That's Huntington's, chorea, thalassemia, hemophilia, the muscular dystrophies, cystic fibrosis. If you could reach in and just change that one defective gene, you would cure them. And if you reached in and not only changed their genetic code, but the genetic code in their germline, in the eggs or the sperm, you would end that disease forever. And we have the ability to do that now. And that's what you're going to see. That's going to be the next wave of treating all these diseases that really weren't treatable before, genetic engineering. So the second great breakthrough that makes that possible is gene sequencing. We can't reach in and change your genetic code if we don't know what it is. And the first gene sequencing, which was done by Eric Landers back in the 1990s, cost $2 billion. We can now sequence you for less than 1,000. So that's the second great breakthrough. And finally, you were asking about big data, precision medicine, the idea that we're going to treat you, not a bunch of people that have the same disease who will all react differently. To treat you depends on two things. It depends on your gene sequence and having the big data to know what your gene sequence actually means. And where we see it by way of example would be, say, breast cancer. Most breast cancers have one of 3 receptors that drive the growth of the tumor. So some are estrogen dependent, some are progesterone dependent, and some are a protein called HER2. But your response will depend on which of those receptors you have. So we need to identify your receptor, and then based on 100,000 other people who had the treatment, know which treatment will actually work for you. That's precision medicine.
Yeah, so when you combine CRISPR gene editing, the sequencing, and then the data that laser focuses on that individual and then looks to clusters of others that have similar issues or diseases and be able to optimize the right therapies and treatments, it is truly revolutionary and transformative. Interestingly, recently I interviewed on this show someone who runs a longevity fund that is investing in a lot of these areas, especially as it pertains to application of AI. My last question for you, as we're running out of time, is, as you look at your life and all the accomplishments that you've done, what is the legacy that you really want to leave behind?
I just want my children to grow up, be self-sufficient, happy, contribute to society. They're my legacy.
That's terrific. So on that note, I've been joined by Gary Michelson, who is a world-renowned certified orthopedic spinal surgeon and a prolific inventor. Thank you for joining today.
No, Scott, thank you. It's been a pleasure.